Welcome back to the Shop Mini RC, everybody. I'm Ken, and today we're taking a look at the Ascent 32. We're going to do a couple little modifications. I want to show some kind of tips and tricks, I guess. Get these shocks kind of oiled up and dampened, which is cool. We'll check out servos, maybe a couple other things. I don't know. We'll see where we are as we do this. We're kind of just off the cuff in it, but I did want to show you some of this stuff because I know a lot of people are asking. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. I think we're going to just start with the shocks. So one of the first things with these guys that everybody notices is just how bouncy they are. And they also kind of sit a little high. Personally, I like my trucks sitting a little lower, and we'll see what we can do about that. But one of the easiest fixes to get rid of some of this bounciness and how high it sits is the micro crawler's favorite thing, which is to throw some rubber bands on it. We got a whole baggie here of these kind of rubber bands. We actually use these mostly for our batteries. We like to take our batteries, we'll put a rubber band around them, and that's how we indicate whether it's storage charged or fully charged or dead. This means it's storage charged. And when we're fully charged, we tuck under the lead. And when we're fully dead, it's completely untucked. And I know, okay, we need to storage charge that. So we have so many batteries, it just makes it super easy. And these things come in like 3 different sizes. I'll put a link down in the description below. But these are going to work great. This is the smallest size. These are going to be perfect if you just want a real quick and easy fix. Now, I do not by any means advocate doing this if you've got the ability to have proper shock lengths, proper dampening, spring rates, stuff like that. This is kind of just a quick fix. It's a dirty fix. It's a little hack, and it's something that pretty much everybody can do. You just got to make sure you get this band kind of tucked around. You can see it's kind of getting stuck on the outside of the shock there. Just got to get it pulled around in there, and it's going to really slam the truck quite a bit. One of the problems with using bands like this is it's not consistent. Some rubber bands, even in the same package, will be a little bit looser than others. Can we not get this one through? Come on now. There we go. Okay, and you can see it's just going to slam that suspension down. Now, it's still going to be able to move. It depends on how tight your rubber bands are. These ones are pretty tight, but over time they loosen up a little. Let me go ahead and get them on all fours and we'll check it out. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So now you can see this guy's slammed. Looks a lot more mean, which I dig. Still bouncy, still a little bouncy, right? We don't really have a lot of suspension per se, but it's going to be slammed to the rocks, and it's going to help you keep your center of gravity super low, and it's still going to be able to articulate a little bit. Again, it just depends on how tight those rubber bands are. The tighter the rubber bands, obviously, the less freedom of movement you're going to have, but the more it's going to help hold it down, especially on inclines and stuff like that. So that's going to help a lot. You are going to rub a lot more on your steering, so you might need to trim that. A lot of people like to trim these fenders a little bit anyway, so a little bit of trimming here wouldn't hurt. But there you go. So that's a quick, easy way to kind of get a cool, aggressive look and get your center of gravity low and kind of remove some of the bounciness. Again, it's still, I mean, it's not bouncy in that sense, but if I do this, it's going to bounce. But you compare that to the stock rig, look at the difference, right? Obviously, this has got a ton of bounce. This has got no bounce in that regard. It's actually a little bit more bounce when you drop it. But when you're just kind of slow crawling, you're not going to have that. And it probably is going to be a little bit more controllable. And again, I think our rubber bands here are a little tight, but over time, it will kind of loosen up and it'll feel a lot better. Anyway, that's a quick fix. We're going to go ahead and show you how to do the shocks if you want to keep springs, which is personally what I like to do. I do like this look a lot. I just wish we had shock mounts to be able to lower it that much and, kind of limit our shock travel a little bit, which is actually part of the mod I'm going to show you. We're going to put O-rings and grease fill these. We're going to use some Udder Butter to grease fill them. This stuff right here is fantastic, and it's going to help dampen it along with an O-ring, and let's go ahead and look at that. All right, we got all of our shocks off this guy. We even took our servo off. I'm going to show you some stuff about the servo here in a minute as well. But our 4 shocks are off, and basically we're going to open this guy up. Simple as that. Pull the cap off. And again, to get the shocks off, all you got to do is kind of rotate them off the ball joints. No issues there. It's not difficult at all. If you have to, you can use some pliers. to help get you off. It's a 1.5 millimeter to get this shock shaft off the end link, just like so. Our little spring retainer, our spring, and then our shock shaft. And this is all we have. So one thing I want to point out, look at this. When this is in here, you have all this movement. See that? Tons of movement, which is not ideal. So we want to kind of limit that. There's a couple things you can do here. One is you could just take these and you could grease fill them. You could just fill this up with some udder butter or your grease of choice. The problem is it's going to leak. It's going to come out the bottom, but it will dampen it for you. It probably will attract dirt. You're probably going to get some grease on the shaft here because it's completely open, and that's not necessarily ideal. But again, if that's what you have, you just want to dampen it, that'll help dampen it a little bit. The next best option is to use these little SCX 24 O-rings. That's where they're most common. So you can just throw one of these little O-rings on here. Actually, we have a couple different sizes here, it looks like. These ones are a little bit looser. See that? I just realized that. So those ones are a little looser, and then we've got these little fattier ones. I like these little fattier ones. They kind of fit over this shaft perfectly. Okay, so you can kind of see the difference between these two. So I'm sure both would work, but the fattier ones that are tighter against the actual shock shaft will be better. You can see that. Look at that. That one's a little loose, whereas this guy is a little fatter. So just be aware of that. But that guy is nice and snug on here, and then we can stick that in here, and it's going to fit. You're going to have to kind of force it a little bit on the shock housing. It doesn't fit. It fits snug, which is good. It's a good thing. See right there, you can kind of see it's not just sliding in. So you got to get that aligned in here, and then you can kind of push this through. And I would just kind of try to tuck it in, use your nail or something to kind of tuck it in just a little bit as you push it. And then you should be good once it's in the shock shaft. Slide that in. And now, once you have it in there, it's probably going to hang out down here just because it's tight around the housing, the shock housing. And now this is a lot more smooth and a lot more stable. Look at that, a lot more stable. And it's very smooth moving in and out. Also, be sure you don't rip your O-ring as you're putting it onto the shock shaft with the threads here. So just be careful with that. But yeah, nice and smooth there. And you could just leave it at that if you wanted to, and that's going to help dampen it a little bit, but not quite as much as if you added some udder butter. And actually, at some point, if that gets dirty or starts to dry rot for any reason, it might start to cause binding. So I like to lube it up. I like to put some grease in there. So we're going to just take a little bit of udder butter, and we're going to kind of push it down in there. You don't need a ton, just enough. Kind of push it down in. You can use your driver. And you could even try to do it, get some under the O-ring if you wanted to, put a little bit of grease in there, and then push your shock shaft and O-ring in there. Probably not a horrible idea there, but that's pretty much what we're going for. I'm just trying to work it in there and get it nice and lubed. We're not trying to fill it, per se. It's not like an oil-filled shock. I'm just trying to lube it in there nicely. All right, now that we're nice and kind of greased up in there, we know we've got some grease. Again, we're not trying to fill it up. It's not necessarily an oil-filled shock. If you tried to put oil in here, it would more than likely leak. But you could do some thinner oil if you really wanted to, but I like the thicker grease here, just for the style of what this shock is. Now remember, when you tighten this down, don't over-tighten. You don't want your screw or your shock shaft coming through and protruding into the link. Just get it snug, just enough. You should be good there. Go ahead and put our shock cap on here. Our spring and our spring retainer. Now this is going to limit your shock travel by like a millimeter, right? Because you have the O-ring inside there. So now this shock's going to be just slightly shorter than stock, which I am totally okay with. I think this truck sits way too high from factory anyway. And I think there's too much travel. I'm not a huge like major articulation guy. I'm not about your suspension doing this, right? Like it looks cool, but it doesn't necessarily perform great. So limiting that travel is totally okay with me. And I think this is going to be good. So now this is nice and smooth in there, and it feels a little dampened. Pretty cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do some other shock. I'm going to do one with just the O-ring, one with just the grease, and then we'll leave one stock and we'll compare. All right, so this first one is still totally stock, and then we'll compare it to this one here, which is just the O-ring. You can see there's just a little bit of difference in the length because of that O-ring. Is going to shorten it up, that shock, just basically the thickness of the O-ring, so about a millimeter. which again, I am totally okay with that. So again, this is super bouncy, no dampening, nothing, and lots of side-to-side play. Look at that. Lots of side-to-side play. And then with just the O-ring, we remove a lot of that side-to-side play. It's a lot more stable. Still a little bit there. A lot more stable, and then a lot more smooth feeling. It's just got kind of a little bit of resistance, a little bit of dampening. And again, it's going to depend on your O-ring and like how supple it is. If it's kind of a older dry rotted O-rings or anything like that, it's probably not going to be as smooth. And over time, it will get like that. But that's pretty good just by itself. Way better than this. You can see this is like super bear, and this is a little bit less bear. Next, we have just the oil in here, and you can see just running this a little bit, it's already got the shaft coated in grease. Excuse me, not oil, but yeah, just grease in there, and it's just kind of gross. I would not do this. It's still got tons of wobble. Look at that, tons of wobble. And yes, it's dampened pretty good actually if you compare it. Not quite as good as the O-ring. Let's see if I can show this. Probably not. Grease only, O-ring only, stock. Okay, so pretty good dampening there actually. But again, it's just got that side-to-side slop, and look, the grease is coming out, so no bueno. And then we got this guy. This is the O-ring with a little bit of grease in there, and I think that's just where it's at. That's what you're going to want to do. Actually, interesting enough, this doesn't feel quite as dampened as just the O-ring, but it feels smooth, and I think it's going to maintain a lot longer than just the O-ring. Just the O-ring is good though, so maybe if you want to do just the O-ring, you can, but I like this grease. I think it feels good. I think it helps just kind of reduce a lot of that play and dampen it and keep it consistent. It's going to stay consistent longer, whereas this is, like I said, the O-ring is going to eventually dry out. And yeah, this just keeps it nice and lubricated. They feel about the same. I think the more this gets used, the worse it's going to get. The more this gets used, the better it's going to get. And then, of course, just stock, bouncy nothingness. And I think that this is the grease is going to stay in great. Like there's no grease coming out. The O-ring, again, just kind of sits at the bottom here, especially if you just push the O-ring in and then grease on top of it. It's just going to keep that O-ring kind of stuck down at the bottom. And it may move up, but I highly doubt it. And even if it does, it's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to help dampen it. So this is really good. And again, it lowers it by like 1 millimeter. So it's going to get our truck a little bit lower, center of gravity lower, get that stance looking good. Let me go ahead and do them all up like this guy with the O-ring and the grease, and we'll throw it on there, and then we'll compare them side by side with the other two, the rubber bands and stock. So something I want to point out after I took the whole axle and, the shocks off, and I had just the axle kind of free-flowing, I noticed it wouldn't compress all the way. I mean, it would, but you had to kind of push it. Look at this. Okay, and both links were doing that. I already fixed this one, but there's resistance in there. I couldn't figure out where it's coming from when I was using the axle. I thought it was the drive shaft at first, and I was just like, why is it kind of stopping and not fully compressing without me pushing down on it? And there's a little bit of, I guess it's maybe part of the mold or something, but what's interesting is if I flip this, of course I dropped it, and hopefully this is the other side. Yeah, it looks like it is. It's hard to tell. But if I flip this, now it moves totally free. Look at this. Like it doesn't stop at all. It almost free falls. There's a little bit of resistance in there, but not much. But that's okay. But it basically, yeah, free falls. Again, I'll flip it back. I don't even have to screw the screw all the way in, and you'll see it locks up. Crazy. So if you have that issue, I would kind of check, because it's going to mess with your suspension quite a bit. And like I said, it was on both sides. So you can flip it around, or what I did on this side is I just took a Dremel or an X-Acto. And here, we'll do it real quick here. I'll do it with an X-Acto because everybody has an X-Acto. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't have Dremels, but you could even just use some sandpaper. And we're basically just going to pull off just a little bit. For some reason, these screws don't like to back out all the way. we'll take off just a little bit around this. And like I said, you can probably just use an X-Acto knife and just kind of shave it. Just kind of do that, or even, I don't want to cut myself trying to show you, but just kind of trim off just a little bit. Again, not the cleanest, but we're taking it down. Really, I'd probably use some sandpaper or a Dremel, but just work off just a little bit. Literally just gotta go like that. Simple as that. Then that guy should be nice and free. Oh, I need to take off a little more. I still feel it kind of stopping right there. But it looks like we might have not gotten it all the way around. We could take a little off right there. Now, you don't want to take off too much because you don't want to weaken those links, but just a little bit. And again, maybe you could just flip yours around. If flipping it around works, then you don't have to worry about drummeling it. I just worry that maybe the other side is also the same way. If you do flip it around, you don't have to worry about it on the axle binding that way, because the axle has plenty of space behind where the link goes. So there's plenty of space in here, so it never touches, which is kind of what's going on here. There we go. Now it's nice and free. Look at that. Okay, so that's all you want to do. You want to make sure those links are nice and free, and then it's not going to kind of have resistance on compression, or if it does compress all the way, resistance pulling itself back out, dropping back out. All right. So here's another one that I haven't really messed with. You can kind of see I took the shocks off, and it's kind of got some resistance right there. It just kind of stops. See that? And then I can push it down further, and it goes past it, but it kind of just stops right there. I can kind of feel a little binding happening. And then once you've fixed that, it'll drop totally freely. See this? Totally free. Before, this one was actually worse than the one I just showed you, but it would literally just stop, and I had to like push it, and it was like clunk, and you could feel it clunk through and break through where it's binding. But now it just totally drops nice and free. So definitely check that. All you gotta do is pop off your two shocks, and you'll be able to feel it for sure. Like I said, right here, it's just like, and then I can push it through. And then push it through. Yeah, and it's those two links right there. The rear, I haven't noticed that any issues on any of the rears. All the rears are nice and free. So no problems there. All right, guys, we got our links all unbound and nice and free. We got our shocks all done on this guy, rubber banded on this guy, and this guy is totally stock. So look at the difference in just how they sit, really. So this guy's super slammed. Again, looks very cool, but we have no real articulation. I mean, there's a little bit, but you can kind of see just a little stiff. Again, that's going to depend on your rubber bands and the weight of your whole truck. Again, the heavier your chassis is, the more it's going to counter those rubber bands. But ideally, you want the chassis and everything up above the springs to be as light as possible, which means having a good actual suspension setup is ideal. But this will work, especially if you're just looking for that kind of cool, mean look. And again, you could lessen the tension by using weaker rubber bands. And I think over time, this is going to weaken up anyway. So we'll see. I don't know how long I'm going to leave it like that, but this is kind of my preferred method. You can see it's a little bit lower than stock. Not quite as low as this guy, right? So that guy's pretty low, but definitely lower than stock. And you're going to see the dampening effect for sure. So here's rear to rear. There you go. Just a little bit lower. But look at this. I mean, that is where it's at. So much better, guys. Like, this is kind of a must-do, in my opinion. If you're not going to change over your shocks completely to the Enjoras, which we'll also do at some point, this is definitely the answer. And I get it. This looks mean, but you get no dampening. Your consistency in the lines and how your truck handles is going to be very different here. It's not going to be nearly as consistent and smooth as this is going to be. And then obviously this is going to be the worst of all of them. But yeah, that's a very good comparison there. I hope that gives you a good idea of what can be done. Again, practically free to do this or this. It's what, $2, worth of materials. So, and most people have those O-rings sitting around. If you don't, again, you can try just grease or just the rubber bands, but I think this is worth buying the O-rings for anyway. But yes. Right there, right in the middle. That's what we want. All right, let's check out the servo. All right, so here is the stock servo. Again, it's a 5-wire, super disappointing that they did that. I have no clue why. It had to have been a money saving measure or just the way this ESC was. I don't get it. But a lot of people, when they go brushless, if they go brushless or when they want to buy a replacement servo, are going to be looking, if they put their own receiver and transmitter in there, you're not going to find a receiver with the 5-wire servo. So you're going to have to swap to a 3-wire. But luckily, this 3-wire servo, I believe this is the exact same servo as the Orlando Hunter servo, just a little different on the case, barely. And obviously the Orlando has a 3-wire servo. So this is using a tiny little plug, but look at this. The measurements are the exact same. And I'll go ahead and measure this out again real quick. I did a rough estimate in my deep dive review, but look at this. Actually, it looks like the Orlando servo. Oh no, yeah, they're the same length, same width, same bolts, mounting spots. Let's see. This is the servo horn off of the Redcat. Oh yeah, same spline on the servo horn, so that's nice. Let's go ahead and get this measured though for you real quick. Again, that bolt spacing, center to center, we're looking at right around 19 and a half, maybe 19 here. Yeah, 19 and a half. All right, our width or our height, 8.3. Our depth from the bottom of the gear here, see like that, 17 to the mount, 11.5 basically. If you go too much further, you do hit the upper links there. And then width here on the actual servo is 16.18. So 16.1, 16.2, 8.3, 11, and 17.5. Okay. And this is pretty much going to be the exact same thing. 17, 11, 8.2, and our holes right there at 19.5. Okay, another option, which I'm hoping will become a thing, are these guys. So these are very similar in size, almost the exact same size actually. The Reefs comes with the smaller plug here and an adapter for the larger Futaba style plug. Now, where we go here? Here we go. Now these are different plugs. The Orlando comes with the, I believe it's a 1.0. And then these, I really don't remember. I'll have to try to put them in the, I'll put them down here. Anyway, there's the two different sizes. Okay, this is more the standard micro receiver size. And then these are they're Orlando specific, but you could always change the ends. Not a huge deal there. And then the 3Flow 9 Cascade has a standard Futaba style. Now in these smaller rigs, I do like this. This is the same as what like the 128 Mini Zs, the high-end racing cars that we use. They use this type of plug. I dig that. So that definitely takes up less space. Plugs in nice. Definitely a bonus there. These are more, readily available. Most receivers run these, so that's always an option too. It just means you're gonna have a little bit larger receiver potentially. Again, these are for micro receivers, and then the Orlando plug-in is for the super small Orlando specific receivers. I don't know of any standard receivers that use this plug other than the one transmitter that's for the Orlando. Anyway, all right, so these guys are the same dimensions. Okay, they're a little bit bigger, just barely, but they are the same dimensions to each other, a little bigger than this guy. You can see it's about the same height. Let's see. Yeah, same height, but wider, which is fine. Wider is okay. And just barely, well, not barely, kind of significantly longer. So, but these guys, Hopefully 3Flow9 will come up with a servo mount and upper link mount here for this. Not going to be able to see it very well here, but you should be able to drop this guy in there. Looks like it might kind of hit on these links, so it might need to be pushed forward just a tad. But as far as the width is concerned, it's really not too crazy wide, but you will need a new servo mount. So hopefully, and these are much more common, this size servo from both Reefs and 3Flow9. We use this size servo in our, like I said, our 128 scale Mini Z on-road high-end race cars. And there's other stuff that runs them too. I think some of these are ran in the Micro Bs. People are running these smaller servos. And yeah, so that's an option. There are, like I said, though, all the Orlando ones that will plug and play straight in. Again, just have to change your plug-in potentially, and they will fit right in there. There's also Metal Gear versions, and then there's a little bit larger Orlando version. I'm not sure if it's similar to this. I think it might be similar to this, but these are available. And I'll try to put some links down in the description below to the different places. I think A-Main has a direct one of these plastic gear exactly like this for $9. I think AliExpress has a Metal Gear one. I think it's like $20. But there are options out there because you can't even change the plug end on this to use a standard receiver, right? It's 5-wire, it's not 3-wire. So that's unfortunate. But we do have options, and I just know a lot of people out there wanted to know what their options were. So I figured I would show you. And again, hopefully 3Flow or maybe even Reefs comes out with a servo mount for this axle, and those upper links should be super easy. Maybe somebody else could even come up with it and 3D print it. Just pick up a 3Flow9 servo and you can figure it out. But that would be awesome to see, because we definitely need some servo options, especially if you plan on changing transmitters or receivers with this guy. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are these axles. I've seen a lot of people in the different groups and whatnot ask about, can you increase the steering angle of this? And the answer in short is no. A lot of people keep saying, oh, if you just, trim down on the C-hub here, you'll get more steering angle or things of that nature. The steering angle in this is limited by the CVD in the axle. I've taken the whole thing apart. I've tested every part. I thought it was the drag link at first, or the steering link right there hitting on that screw. You can see it just barely, but it doesn't actually hit on that screw. And I thought maybe it was this rear screw hitting on the inner of the C-hub. You can see right there, it does almost touch, but I have to force it. I have to force it to touch. But I took that screw out, took the steering link off, took everything apart, and the steering angle never increased until I pulled out the the axle shaft itself. So it's the actual CVD that's limiting that steering. And it's actually pretty good, because even at max steering, when it's maxing out the axle, the CVD there's no bump. So it's nice and smooth, even maxed out there. But again, there's nothing you can do to the axle to get more steering angle on this axle housing or the knuckle or the C-hub or the drag link, steering link, none of that. Nothing's going to give you more steering, unfortunately, with either the axles without changing out your actual axle shaft or CVD. It's got pretty good steering angle, though. I don't know what people are talking about, like concerned about that. I think people just like to try to get nutso steering angle out of stock stuff, but I don't think it's going to happen here. Like I said, I took everything apart, maxed out on the CVD there. But I think it's still a really good steering angle. But just some insight for people. All right, let's look at these things. These are some little Wheel Hex converters. These are some aluminum little Wheel Hex converters. Let's take a look at that. So as I showed in my deep dive video, these are 5mm hex hubs. There's not a lot of wheels out there for 5mm hex hubs. There are some. I believe there's some WPLs and things of that nature, but not a lot. Most of them are going to be 7mm. So these little adapters are just, these are aluminum ones. I'm sure somebody has 3D printed these. I think, in fact, I've seen them before. So just be aware, there's probably a file out there, but we snagged these aluminum ones up off of Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description to them if you want to snag them up too. I think they were $10, and they just sit right on top of the hex hub there. Now they do give you basically 1mm of extra offset here. So it's going to push your wheel out 1mm, but that might be needed with some of these just to make sure you're not rubbing, and it might help to get you away from your shock here on the larger wheels and tires. So here's our stock wheel and tire, and then here's one off of the FCX 24M. They're similar in size, not too much of a big difference. Let's see. So this guy here is right at like 42, 43mm. Yeah, I would say it's closer to 43mm on that. This guy, looking at 45mm. It's significant on this little thing, but there are some options out there for different tires on 1.0s that are smaller. Again, this is an Enduro 24 stock tire and wheel, 45. Here's a Patagonia. This guy's going to be significantly bigger. It's, 53-ish. But they're all 1.0 wheels, and you can get some really small, like 47 millimeter tires for 1.0s, and you can even take some with a 1.7 tires like this. And if you, just like I do when I take a 1.0 and trim it out for a 1.3 wheel, you can do the same here, where you take your stock tire, you flip it inside out, get that guy turned around, and then this little lip here, you've got this little bead lip kind of sticking out. You basically just trim that off, trim off that little lip, and then you can fit it over a 1.0 wheel, a true bead lock, without it like pushing out, because sometimes if you stretch it out, it makes the wheel really balloon, and that's not ideal. So it prevents it from doing that. You get a lot more sidewall, you get the bigger wheel options, more wheel options. So if you want something pretty like a trio, you can do that. And it won't create a bigger diameter. But again, there are some smaller tires, some 46s, 47s. I believe RC four-wheel drive has some. They have some 0.7 millimeter wheels and tires. And if those also happen to be on 7 millimeter hexes, well, you've got your adapter here. So you can throw this guy on there, boom. Again, it looks massive with these tires, and those wheels are pretty massive, but it does give you some options, and that's always good, right? And here's the FCX 24M. Oh, our little hex fell off. So that's not too drastic of a difference. Okay, and then yeah, the Enduro 24 here. Not too crazy, but it is still pretty beefy. Definitely, if you're into oversized tires, you're going to have a lot more options this way. One thing to be aware of is, again, it does move it out a millimeter, so you're going to be a little bit slimmer on your axle shaft here and your nut. So just be aware of that. If that hub here is too thick, you may not have enough thread to be able to put that wheel and tire, or that nut on there and hold a wheel and tire on. Also, the axle shaft is much smaller, right? Like this axle shaft is only 2 millimeters. And I believe a lot of these are 1.5s for the SCX 24, maybe even 3. So you got a little bit of that going on. But once you put the wheel nut on, where'd our wheel nut go? Put your wheel nut on, everything's pretty stable. It stabilizes up. You get it nice and compressed in there, and you're usually pretty good. Let me get it on there real quick for you. Nice and snug. Make sure we're not binding. Snug it up as much as you can without binding. There we go. And there you have it. Okay. And I believe Fair RC has some different wheels and tire options for the FCX 24M. So that might be worth looking at, because they're going to be much closer in size to these stock guys. And then, of course, like I said before, you have all the Orlando tires and the 18 millimeters. You could always use the stock wheel here and get some new tires from Orlando. All the different brands that make Orlando 18 millimeter tires, or even their smaller tires. Look how small these guys are. These are itty bitty. I can peel this guy off real quick. Compare it to the stock tire. But you could always stretch them onto an 18 millimeter. It'd be pretty thin, but you could do it. Be about like that. Actually, I wonder if I could just stretch it on there. Let's see. Yeah, you could. Oh, there's foams in there too. Whoops. Well, we're stretching the foams. And the Orlando tires are kind of narrow, so it's going to kind of puff you out a little bit here. But you could. I mean, again, it's more of that West Coast style. But that's the thing, I guess, if you really wanted to. But yeah, some very small wheels there. I believe these Orlando wheels are, yeah, 15 millimeters. These guys here are the 18 millimeters, so these are going to be the same as what comes on the Redcat as far as the diameter of the wheel itself. See that? Perfect. And these are actual bead locks, but these are going to have a different, these don't have a hex hub. These have the same hub as what's on the SCX 30, which is a flattened axle shaft. So those are not going to work on here. But again, there's tires that will. So these tires are tiny compared to these guys here. And there's a couple different offerings for this. And I think they would work fairly well. Again, if you're looking for something more scale, they're definitely going to be more scale and drop your overall center of gravity lower on the truck, and they'll actually give you more torque. So remember, your final drive ratio is going to be the diameter of your tire. So the smaller diameter of your tire, the more kind of torque you're going to have to the ground. So something like this versus that, you're gonna perform better with this as far as torque and power and ability to climb. Now clearances are going to be different, right? Your ability to grab rock or bridge gaps is going to be a little bit less, but I'm a part of small tire gang. I like the smaller tires, so I wouldn't be opposed to that on this, and then lowering this guy a bunch. And you're not trying to get ground clearance, you're just trying to hit good lines and trying to keep your truck from rolling to get those real steep inclines and whatnot. Anyway, there's a lot of options out there, I think, and these little Wheel Hex hub guys, they're perfect for this. So 5mm to 7mm, they do exist. Get you a lot of options. And again, smaller tires on 1.0 wheels, I think would work. It's almost like running a 1.3 on a 1.0, right? Again, it's just kind of the same proportions. I believe this is actually like a 0.9 inch. This is a 0.7 inch. And then the 1.0 here, this is a Trio 1.0. So you can kind of see, again, I don't think a 1.0 wheel would be horrible on these guys. You just need to have a much smaller tire. You need to use like the stock diameter, in my opinion, maybe a little bigger if you like big tires, and smaller if you want something a little bit more scale. But smaller on a 1.0 is gonna thin out a lot. So just be aware of that. I don't know. Maybe at some point we'll cut these and throw I don't know. Maybe we'll do it right now. Like this. Yeah. They are a little big, but they are 1.0s. These are hard parks, some of the baddest ass wheels out there, and totally customizable. We have a whole video on the hard park wheels. There's like 10, 20,000 combinations you can make with these wheels. Pretty sick. Stock tires. So there it is. Stock wheels, stock tires. There it is. Stock tires on some hard park wheels, 1.0s with the hexes. And the nice thing is the hard parks, you can mount on the face, and there's different hex sizes as well. We have the smallest offset. And so they actually tuck in a little bit compared to the stock. I don't know if you can tell there, but they're a little bit more tucked than the stock. Even with the extra 1mm spacer that comes from, well, not really spacer, but 1mm hex for the 7mm adapter there. So very cool. It does barely rub on the drag link right there. I mean, like barely. I still have like nice freedom of movement here, but I can feel that it's barely rubbing. But I think it's just it'll rub in over time. In worst case, we can just literally sand just a tiny bit off that. But yeah, look at that. How cool is that? Just got to find the right 1.0s and you're good to go. The nice thing about the hard park wheels is there's so many options for different offset hubs. They have a plastic inner ring, an aluminum inner ring, a brass inner ring. I believe they have different color barrels. They have carbon fiber or titanium faces, and you can mix and match them however you want. There's hundreds of ways to mix and match them. Like I said, we're just going with the basic single face with beadlock ring, but you could double stack the faces and get some crazy designs in there, which is really cool. I mean, look at all the different face types. I mean, just tons of different faces. Freaking awesome. And then you can, like I said, you can stack them. Take a carbon fiber back, do this, line up the holes, and boom, there's your wheel. You're going to turn it one hole and boom, a different design. Well, these are the same, but something like this. There you go. The slide adjustment can change it. These, carbon fiber in the back, carbon fiber in the front, just however you want to align them. Pretty awesome. You can do something like that. Offset it, do it like that. And again, all different kinds of materials, all different kinds of designs. Like that's dope. Slide it over. Totally different style. Super cool. Plus, like I said, all the different rings. We have these like super aggressive. You have these type of beadlock rings, these super aggressive beadlock rings. Depending on how you line it up, it's going to look different, right? Going down through or splitting it. So cool, so cool. Anyway, let me show you how to cut these tires. So like I said earlier, super simple. You just kind of flip these guys inside out. Get that bead to show real well. We have some Lexan trimming scissors. Just go in and cut that bead off. Don't go too deep. I'm going to go a little deeper than just that ledge, but you can see right about here. Whoop. These guys do like to fold in on themselves for some reason. And you don't have to be totally perfect. It is better on these little guys to be closer than the larger ones. Larger ones, you have more room for error. You can see we kind of got a little slit there. That's fine. Not the end of the world. Again, it's just about getting in there and doing it. And then I'll show you when we put the tire onto the wheel and the beadlock ring, you actually still have quite a bit of material showing, at least for these tires and the hard park wheels. Again, if you have a different tire set or different wheels, it may be different for you. But again, I'm just kind of in a hurry here, being a little sloppy, showing you that, you know, anybody can do it. It's not perfectly round. It's okay. It's fine. Flip that guy around. We're going to throw our brass inner ring in. This is going to be for the front. And these are directional, so make sure you're going the correct direction. The tires are directional. So we want to flip this over this way. And this is our face. Here's our rear ring here. I like to usually get a little moisture on there, and it helps pull the ring or the rubber over the ring and slides on nicely. There you go. Just like so. Okay, and then we'll take our ring face, we'll preload it with a screw, like so. Just kind of slide your tire back, get your hole lined up with your screw, just a little bit. You don't screw it the whole way. Just a little bit, don't screw it the whole way. Make sure you can tuck your tire on it underneath if it pops out. And you want that tire sitting nice and flush. And then we'll get another screw and do the same thing right next to it. And we'll kind of just go around the whole tire, just kind of tucking the tire back a little bit, getting the screw into the hole, and just doing like a half turn, maybe one full turn to get the screw to hold. But you don't want to screw it all the way in because you want to be able to see how that tire like pulls through. You could even skip one and try to get it to line up. Pull his tire back out, get your screw up underneath in the in-between there, push that tire out of the way with a screw if you can, and then get your screw lined up with the hub hole and just do a turn or two. Again, if you do get rubber caught in there, it's going to make it very hard to tighten, so don't force it. If you force it, you might break the screw head off. You can always pull the rubber out a little bit, back your screw out a little bit. Just try to make sure it stays lined up. So I'm like unscrewing it all the way, but I'm staying lined up with the hole. It's kind of pushing that rubber out of the way, and then I can just tighten it back up a little bit. There we go. And you'll just push around the whole tire that way, getting the rubber out of the way, and then you'll end up with the tire nice and mounted, just like so. And again, we're going to have much stiffer sidewalls now because there's no foam in these tires stock. So they're kind of sloppy like this anyway, but now with the larger diameter wheel, it gets rid of some of that side play. So our side healing should do a little better here. It's looking good though, feels good. I want to wrap these up and get them on. And there we have it. Look at that. Looks awesome. So I do want to point some stuff out about these little wheel hub hex extenders. You don't have a lot of meat left on the axle shaft there. So you got to kind of tighten it down pretty good. You want to make sure you're nice and free. So I'm just barely touching it. Got that little bit of play in there. That's good. On my front, you'll notice I don't have that. That is, well, at least on that side. On this side, I do. I got a little bit of play. But even then, it's still a little tight. So I'm going to have to back it off. You might want to use a tiny bit of Loctite on there, just because that wheel nut could come off. Because again, there's not a lot of meat. But on this side, you can see, like I showed earlier, that drag link is kind of rubbing. So we're going to have to sand that down just a little. Another thing I wanted to show is because the axles are a narrower diameter than the 1.0 wheel axle hole, you could end up mounting them and they'll be a little wobbly. Look at that. You can kind of see it wobbling. You can hear it rubbing, but you can see how it's wobbling, and it's rubbing only in one spot because it's wobbling. The reason that wheel is wobbling is because it's not sitting completely straight on the axle. because that axle shaft hole in the wheel is larger than the axle shaft. Because again, these axle shafts are smaller than general 1.0 wheels. So every wheel is going to be a little different depending on the manufacturer. Just be aware of that. Try to get them sitting as flat and round, you know, as round as possible, so you're not wobbling around too much in there. Okay. So we're going to have to readjust that. Also, it's still kind of going to rub a little bit, but I'm going to sand that down, and so we should be better. Anyway, okay, one last little thing to that I want to talk about, and that is bodies. Look at this little guy. So this came off of a very hobby grade toy. I think it was like 20 bucks, 25 bucks on Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description. Little buggy body. You're going to be able to find a lot of stuff like this just in different toys and toy grade RCs, things of that nature. This guy's actually really light, little Lexan interior. Actually, we still got our plastic protection on there. Yeah, look at that. Very cool. And I already trimmed it out a little bit here for the shock towers. It literally just pulled off this thing. Just got like a little peg here, 2 little pegs there. I just pulled it off, came right off, and it's a little tiny small, a little tiny, a little short, just a little bit. But I actually kind of like this longer stretched look. So I'm gonna try to get it on here. I am gonna cut this chassis, the stock chassis. I gotta cut off the front bumper. So we want it to sit right about there, at least where the servo is, hopefully. Kind of keep the servo horn behind this grill, but that's going to mean cutting off this whole front part of the chassis here. And then the rear, I'm going to have to cut it off right there, bing, to drop this guy down in. So we'll see what we do here. I'm going to chop this up. We do have other stock rigs, but I kind of wanted to just kind of have fun and play with this. That's really what it's all about, modifying it to make it work for what you want. And then our battery obviously won't be able to go up there anymore because it's going to be super low on the front. So our battery will just go on our sliders here on the side and tuck in there. But it should work pretty decent. I think it's going to look awesome. I really like that kind of stretched look on a buggy. Something like that. Should be pretty cool. The sliders pretty much line up. Very cool. Again, there's going to be a lot of options out there. This is just one of them. And I'm sure there's going to be a ton of bodies specifically for this. You know, this size actually might have worked better on the SCX 30, just because the SCX 30 is like 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters shorter. But we're going to do it on here. I like the look. So we're going to see what we can do.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
And boom, there we have it. Look at that, ladies and gents. Like 2 hours later. Pretty sweet. I do wish it sat just a little lower, a little bit shorter shocks. I could also rubber band these down as well, like the other rig here. Get it super slammed. But then we got no suspension at all. This isn't bad as it sits, so I kind of like that. Just wish it was just a little lower. Wish I could get those shocks, maybe just shorter shocks in general. Here's the stock. But yeah, pretty dope. And here, I'll show you how I did it. Velcro on the front. These little hooks on the back are part of the original chassis rail. Obviously, I had to cut off the entire bumper and front bumper, rear bumper, mount all the chassis rails. So I trimmed off the chassis rails here on the front. I left them silver here so you could see where I trimmed, or it's trimmed easily. Cut a little bit off this tray here, just a little bit, not much. Battery sitting on the side. Didn't even rubber band it in. It sits nice and snug once this body's on there. No problem. Decase the ESC. Needed to make a lot more room in there. The case sits so high. There's the original case. And it had this big, thick piece of double-sided servo tape in there. So it's sitting super high and basically over these shock mounts here, and was causing it to hit on the interior. I was going to cut out the interior. I touched the Dremel to it, and then I was like, no, wait! So I actually got just a little tiny nick in my paint. Oh, so frustrating. Anyway, that's why you really want to think things through. And I was thinking about it for a while, like the best way to deal with it. And I was like, I don't really want to cut the case down and Dremel all that down. And I was just like, eventually just decase it. Easy enough, save some weight, makes sense. There's our rear shock towers. I completely cut off that whole rear part of that chassis, and I left just a little tab, just a little piece of aluminum sticking out, and trimmed our Lexan here so that we could tuck in, get it nice and snug. Boom, here. Let's tuck it in, get that little kind of clip piece of the chassis over that rear part, drops down, and then we've got some Velcro up on the front. No problem. Just Velcro's down. Holds great. And there we go. I think it looks fantastic. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to perform pretty decent now that there's some brass rings on the front wheels and just a little bit heavier, lower center of gravity. And we haven't even done any of the Endura upgrades yet. So very cool. And yeah, it seems good. I mean, it seems real good. We can go ahead and flip it on real quick. Power up our transmitter here. Tuck in the rear part of our body. Drop it down. A little Velcro snag. Boom. There we go. Nice. This looks like it's a little bit stretched, but really it's the stock length. So yeah, digging it for sure. It's gonna be fun. The tires do rub a little on the shock. Just a little bit on those shock springs. Oh well. That's what you get when you want to slam it and angle the shocks a bunch. We tried to angle them as much as we could. I got the fronts angled all the way back, but the rears, I couldn't put them in the highest position. I could have lowered the rear just a little bit, but the problem was the actual body here. You can see I already had to notch this out just a little bit. And actually, you know, a little trick on these. So we bent this down a little bit. You can see there's a little bit of white from bending. Little trick. And especially after you like kind of use an X-Acto to kind of trim that out a little, just take a little heat to it. Just a little, not a lot, just a little. Kind of heat it up, let that white fade away where it's kind of bending. We're kind of rounding out a little bit. Oh, I too much. I did too much. Damn it, of course, because I'm busy talking to you guys. I just wanted to heat it up just a little bit, just to kind of get that plastic, kind of let itself kind of form in and not look like it was so cut. See, it looks a little bit smoother there. Again, you just wanted just a little bit of warmth in that plastic. I did a little too much there. Stupid. And you don't want to let the soot get on there because then you get that. Either way, you can't see it when the body's on, so I'm not overly worried. And again, this is just more of a demonstration that, you know, anybody can do it. Just take some creativity. I had no idea how I was going to mount this body when I got it. I was just like, you know what? We'll figure it out. And look, worked perfect. Didn't even take anything special. I was going to use the original horn thing, but as I was drummeling it to cut it a little shorter, it got caught and shot across the room, and I can't find it. So we improvised. The Velcro works just fine. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. All right, guys, I appreciate you hanging out. Huge shout out to all of our channel members. All these guys get to see videos early before anybody else without ads. They also get priority comment replies. They also get other perks and benefits depending on the level. It's one of the better ways to help support the channel, and I really appreciate all of them. They also have a special channel in our Discord, and yeah, so definitely check out our Discord as well. Anybody can join that, but members do have a special channel. Discord link will be down in the description. Link to this RC will be in the description. Link to the Hex Hub adapters will be in the description. We'll link to Hard Park as well. You can check them out there. All that good stuff. And yeah, some of the other servos, we'll link to them, the 3Flow 9, reefs, stuff like that. We'll just try to get you links down in the description so you can easily find what we did here if you want to do something same or similar. I recommend at least kind of doing it in your own way. If you really like this, I don't care if you copy it. I think that's awesome. I just want people to get in there and try to do things, try to use their hands, try to use their tools, try to get creative. And man, I am just dropping everything today. Anyway, guys, why don't you put down in the comments below ascending, because the Redcat's ascending into a new thing, a new beast. And we're going to keep doing more stuff. So definitely make sure you like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. All these things help support the channel, and they're free. They're free for you. Just a click, but they mean the world to me. And yeah, get out there and build something awesome. Build a car, build a course, build a community. All those things help keep the hobby alive, and then smash it, crash it, and bash it. But don't break the expensive parts. Peace!